Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Fletcher School's second virtual commencement in our 88-year history. That is not something I ever expected to say. Looking back over the past year, through the difficult moments of uncertainty and confusion, frustration, through the pain of loss and isolation, our students have shown grit and determination, using this crisis as an opportunity to deepen their learning and preparedness for leadership. Our faculty and staff too have worked seamlessly together in meeting the school's mission. Today then is an especially joyous moment, and one where, as we celebrate our newly minted graduates and awardees, we also, with deep gratitude, thank you, the parents, spouses, partners, children, extended family, chosen family and loyal friends for supporting us through these unprecedented times. Students, wherever you are and whatever you are wearing below the Zoom box, please turn to or text those who supported you through this year and thank them. Aside from your family, there is nobody prouder of your accomplishments, small or large, than the fabulous Fletcher faculty. They have encouraged and challenged you. They have tested you and, evidenced by this ceremony, found you ready. Fletcher is for life, and so we have three asks of you today. First, that you remain active members of this community in the proud and passionate tradition of Fletcher alumni. Second, that you lean back and help the next generation of students to make their way in the world as others who came before you have leaned back to help you. And third, and most importantly, we ask that you use the knowledge and know-how, the connections and perspectives that you have gained at Fletcher for the best of purposes. For as Mahatma Gandhi said, the future depends on what we do in the present. You have done well in the present and have strengthened the foundation of a better future. This is a happy day for our alumni as the more than 10,000 alums across 150 countries receive the class of 2021 into their midst. You will enrich our alumni network even further. Since our founding, our alumni have shaped international affairs. Class of 2021, you now have the opportunity, responsibility and privilege to carry this Fletcher tradition forward. Each spring, members of the graduating class mark their entrance into the Fletcher alumni community by supporting the Fletcher Fund with a class gift. On behalf of the Fletcher School and the chair of our Board of Advisors, I am pleased to accept the class of 2021's gift. These funds will directly support future Fletcher students. We are here to honour the 2021 graduating class of the Fletcher School. They have succeeded in a rigorous course of study in international affairs. They comprise 25 Masters of Global Business Administration, 8 Masters of Arts in Transatlantic Affairs, 3 Masters of Laws in International Law, 3 Masters of Arts in Humanitarian Assistance, 26 Masters of Arts, 75 Global Masters of Arts, 35 Masters of International Business, 272 Masters of Arts in Law and Diplomacy, and 7 Doctors of Philosophy. This year, we welcomed Dean Maribel Blanco to our community, so imagine her voice calling out your name, her voice crackling with pride. Today, we also bestow prizes for special achievements and contributions to this vibrant Fletcher community. Jonathan Brandon is the recipient of the Robert P. Stewart Prize in recognition of high academic achievement at the end of first year of studies at Fletcher. Sabrina Rose and Tomoki Sano are joint recipients of the Edmund A. Gullion Prize in recognition of their high academic achievement at the end of a second year of studies at Fletcher. Neha Lashari, one of your elected student speakers today, is the recipient of the Leo Gross Law Prize for High Academic Achievement in Law-Related Studies. And Brett McAvoy and Ben Spatz are both recipients of the Peter Ackerman Doctoral Dissertation Award. Our Administrator of the Year, Katie Mulroy, is recognised for going above and beyond in our support to students in such a challenging time. Professor Tom Dannenbaum is the recipient of this year's James L. Paddock Teaching Award. This honour is especially prized as it is the choice of the student body. Finally, congratulations to the 15 newest members of Honours Civicus and to one of our doctoral graduates, Jeremy Gwynn, for receiving the Tufts University Presidential Award for Civic Life. To all the recipients of special honours and prizes, thank you for enriching our school community this past year. Each year, Fletcher students elect two of their own to speak on behalf of the class at commencement. Like all of you, I look forward to hearing from Leslie Brock and Neha Lashari. But I'd also like to take a moment to recognise extraordinary service to the school, and on behalf of everyone associated with Fletcher, to thank Jess Salacuse and Robert Falsgraf. Following 34 years of service to the school, including 9 years as Dean, Jess Salacuse has been appointed Emeritus Dean and Distinguished Professor Emeritus. Following an extraordinary 50 years of teaching at Fletcher, Bob Falsgraf has been appointed Professor Emeritus. Both have been pivotal in their development of their respective fields of study. Both are world-renowned. Both Jess and Bob have been cornerstones of the school, and I am pleased that they both will remain actively engaged in the school going forward. We are also privileged to have Mr. Filippo Grandi, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, address us. A lifetime of service to some of the most vulnerable within society. His career in refugee and humanitarian work spans 30 years. As we witness a relentless upward tick in the numbers of displaced people and refugees in the world, his work and his insights could not be more timely for our community. This past year, we've been disrupted. Families, friends, plans, careers, studies, disrupted. Yet, we have adapted. Until this year, we always talked of vaccine development in increments of years and decades. Now, it is weeks and months. We need, as Yuval Noah Harari has noted, a politics, and I would say an international politics, that is equal to our science. We know now, at a more visceral level than many of us have known before, that to take care of ourselves, we must take care of others. If we couldn't win that argument before on moral grounds or ethical grounds, then recovery from this pandemic and the economic divergence it may cement makes that argument for us in other ways. Yet while we follow vaccine diplomacy, our international system, suffering from the benign neglect of friends and the hostility of populists from left and right, is worn, and it shows. Consensus has been weaponised, and hybrid governance has sprouted up to keep the international community moving forward as best it can. The single most important point of international cooperation, that everyone, no matter their income or citizenship, race or nationality, should be able to be vaccinated quickly, that a single jab upon which the trust essential for many issues to make progress in a time-critical way, threats in plain sight, can be combated. This all depends on a hybrid coalition of civil society, philanthropy and government. At one level, it is inconceivable that institutions of the international system haven't done better. But if we are to do better, we need to address the crises of solidarity in their constituent parts, that is, the countries of the world, including yours. And this is where you, the class of 2021, come in. Because in this world, where solutions can come faster when we cooperate, where the new rules of governance have yet to be written, where multilateralism exists with a great power rivalry, where governance is hybrid between government and civil society and the private sector, and where many of the place settings at the negotiating table have yet to be set, you will shape outcomes wherever you work. And when you enter the room, you will find others from the Fletcher School on the other side of the table. And now, I'm pleased to introduce Liz Tarlow, Chair of the school's Board of Advisors, herself a holder of both a mould and PhD from Fletcher.
Hello, everyone. I'm Liz Tarlow, Chair of the Fletcher Board of Advisors, and on behalf of the entire advisory board, it's my great pleasure to extend my warmest congratulations to you, the Fletcher class of 2021. I suspect you will forever be known as the Fletcher COVID-19 class of 2021, being the first and hopefully the last class of Fletcher students studying under a pandemic cloud for almost 3 semesters. And as I thought about what I wanted to say to you today, one phrase that kept coming into my head is the opening line of Charles Dickens' great novel, A Tale of Two Cities, only it kept coming back to me in reverse order. It was the worst of times. It was the best of times. And I don't want to dwell on how this has been the worst of times, because you know only too well all about that. I want to celebrate how this has been the best of times. One positive outcome is that you had the opportunity to study with our brilliant faculty who were committed to a successful pivot to the virtual classroom and to adapting the curriculum and their research interests to the needs of a very different world of tomorrow. You were not only witnesses at the creation of a new educational environment, but you were the vital participants. What your class will also be known for is your great resilience and adaptability, 2 traits that truly bode well for your future success. You too became experts in how to adjust to the online and then hybrid learning environment. The international students among you, God bless you, living in different time zones, face the additional challenges of class schedules based on Medford time, so that you were often taking classes and expected to be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed in the middle of your night or in the wee hours of your morning. On top of that, many of you mobilized to lend your local help to your local communities as they too struggled with the pandemic. You're a class that's enormously committed to social justice and solving the problems of widespread inequity and prejudice. And you have dedicated much of your energy to engaging in these issues. And many of you did all of this while juggling your own very significant family responsibilities. The best of times has also been reflected in the results of your efforts to make the school a better place. Through your regular engagement with the school leadership, including, as I understand, a healthy diet of weekly petitions. Because the board seeks to deepen its ties with the Fletcher students, this year, our executive committee set a new tradition of meeting with members of your student council to get a sense of how you're faring and to hear your concerns and suggestions about how we might be of help. We first met in January and then in April, and we on the executive committee were struck by the dramatic change in tone between those 2 months. In January, the student representatives described a first semester where the predominant feelings were those of melancholy, uncertainty, isolation, and lack of sufficient communication and support. With the help of your input and the school's commitment to addressing these problems, student council members reported in April a decidedly lighter, much more hopeful mood on campus. Students expressed to us their deep appreciation to the school for soliciting and responding to their feedback and suggestions, and they had only the highest praise for school leadership and the various department administrators, including the excellent new hires, for their heartfelt and wonderful support. So, under the best of times column, we need to include your engagement, your articulate voices, and your advocacy, all of which is needed to help affect positive change. In April, I asked the student council members if they thought the pandemic had impeded that sense of bonding that is, as you know, one of the great hallmarks of the Fletcher experience. One student suggested that having suffered through COVID time together, you've actually developed a powerful sense that the foundation of lifelong friendships has been securely established. In fact, she described your specific Fletcher experience with a phrase that should be added to the Fletcher lore, namely, a special trauma bond. Although you must now navigate the challenging and uneven job market, I am so confident in your success. You are the very leaders we need to solve the most urgent and complex problems in a world that has clearly changed forever. Along with my fellow board members, I wish you the very best. Be well, be safe, stay in touch, and once again, wonderful congratulations to you all.
Dear Fletcher's class of 2021, I look forward to hearing about the great work that you're going to do. Be well, do well, stay safe, and stay awesome.
Congratulations, Fletcher graduates of 2021. I wish you and your families a very joyful celebration of all the hard work you've done here at Fletcher and of all the good work that I know you're going to go out and do in the world in coming years. It's been a great pleasure working with many of you, and I hope you'll keep in touch. Congratulations again.
Now I'm delighted to welcome Linda Young, a 1991 Mould graduate, and invite her to offer the alumni greeting. Linda came to Fletcher 30 years ago, determined to make a difference, and she has built a career serving others, most recently as the Unified Commander for the COVID Command Center of the City and County of San Francisco. It's a real honor to have you join us today, Linda.
Dean Kite, thank you for inviting me to speak today. I am honored to be here at our class's 30th year anniversary. To our distinguished faculty, honored guests, and particularly to our graduating seniors, if I may share with you my career path since Fletcher and how the Fletcher Alumni Network has enriched my life. I graduated in 1991, specializing in international trade, private international law, and U.S. diplomatic history with Asia. My first job was working with Mayor Tom Bradley in Los Angeles as an international trade specialist. I was so excited to be working in the field that I studied. But as some of you may remember, in 1992, there was a civil unrest in LA, and my career took a completely different turn. Working with my mentor, Deputy Mayor Linda Griego, we ended up at Rebuild LA, focusing on economic development and helping to revitalize small businesses to create jobs in the community. We partnered with local universities to create training programs, and in the end created 3 industry associations that are still around today: the Southern California Biomedical Association, the Food Industry Business Roundtable, and the Toy Association of Southern California. Helping these small minority-owned businesses fit very much with my own background. I'm your typical immigrant story. Born in Hong Kong, youngest of 5 kids, and my parents' names are Richard Tat Ming Young and Lucy Lau Young. We immigrated in 1971, and since I was 12, 13 years old, I worked in our family-owned businesses in Fresno, California. I was lucky enough to get scholarships into UC Berkeley and the Fletcher School. I wanted to be part of a community that strived to make the world a better place, and the Fletcher model spoke to me. Think globally, act locally, and to act locally with respect and kindness. I was also motivated by people like Dean Jerry Sheehan, who believed in me and encouraged me to pursue my commitment to public service. I think back to my times at Fletcher, and the friends I had are my friends today. Look around you. Your friends will be doing significant work around the world, and your work will be so much better because of these Fletcher networks. After LA, my husband and I moved to San Francisco, and I got a job with the City and County of San Francisco working with an independent task force on affirmative action and public contracting. That 6-month assignment turned out to be a 20-year career, and here's how my Fletcher friendships enriched my life. In 2013, I was the Deputy City Administrator and represented San Francisco at a panel at the UN ISDR Global Platform for Disaster Reduction in Geneva. San Francisco had many environmentally innovative programs, and I was asked to speak about them. During the day, I attended the conference, but at night and on the weekends, my family and I got to hang out with my Fletcher friends, staying with Melinda Henry, my first year Blakely Hall roommate, then having lunch with my former boss, Peter Allgeier, who was the US ambassador to the World Trade Organization at his residence, so technically on US soil, and then having dinner with our former Fletcher colleague, Sanam Raughi, who represented Bhutan at the UN, which was also technically on Bhutan soil. So I told my kids that we had been in 3 different countries that day. How cool is that? Later, my boss, City Administrator Ed Lee, became Mayor Ed Lee, the first Asian American mayor of San Francisco. He traveled overseas to strengthen San Francisco's relationships with Asian countries. When I heard he was in Seoul, Korea, I texted him and I said, "Who are you meeting with?" And in that delegation was Joy Yamamoto, Fletcher class of 1990, who had been our resident assistant at Blakely Hall and was now working for the State Department. He remembered her report about the economic situation, but also said he met with just a very small group of people. And yet here it was, the Fletcher Network at work. After the city administrator's office, I worked at SFO as the director of People, Performance, and Development. SFO had a $7 billion capital plan, and we frequently issued bonds. One day I was speaking with our deputy city attorney about one such issuance when she mentioned that she had just spoken with someone in New York who knew me. It was Scott Ulrey, my roommate during my second year at Fletcher. He was the general counsel for the Office of Management and Budget for New York City. Again, what a small world. During the past year, I've been deployed as a disaster service worker for the city and county of San Francisco, starting as the deputy logistics chief for policy and advanced planning, then moving up to be logistics chief, and then now one of 3 unified commanders at the San Francisco COVID-19 Command Center. At the beginning of COVID last year, I emailed back and forth with my Fletcher roommate to learn more about the global pandemic and how we can keep our communities safe. It was reassuring to know that people like Melinda Henry was tackling these issues at the World Health Organization. And if you haven't already started, you can pretty much plan your vacations around the Fletcher friendships. It's less expensive and way more fun. Over the years, I've stayed with my former roommate, Tom Vida, who was working at the US Embassy in Korea. In Tokyo, we had dinner with Mariko Noda, class of 1990. And on the trip in 2019, she got us tickets to the Ghibli Museum, which are almost impossible to get abroad. In Bangkok, we had lunch with Busadi Santipitox, who is now the Thailand's ambassador to Australia. So these are your peers. I say this lightheartedly, but I realize these friendships are significant as well. The need to serve others before ourselves is very much part of our values during the Fletcher years. With Yoon Park, we restarted the Community Action Group and served meals to the homeless in Boston. And in 2006, 2007, I got an email from my good friend, Marcia Greenberg, about forming a network for Fletcher women. If anyone didn't know, Marcia was the force behind the origins of the Fletcher Women's Network. We attended a reunion similar to this one, and she wanted to make an impact on the representation of women faculty members and that we needed to be heard. We created regional networks to put women together, and I organized the one in the Bay Area. Let's pause for a moment and recognize that Fletcher School finally has our first female dean. Dean Kite, please let us know how we can support you during these challenging times. When those significant events happen in your life, look around. These are the friends you will undoubtedly contact. During 9/11, I called Scotty, my old roommate, and we watched that horror together, me on television in San Francisco, and he out his window in Manhattan. So my plea to you is, please take time to maintain your Fletcher relationships and friendships. It makes life so much better. My life is better because of my Fletcher friends in education, and I want to thank them now for their friendships over the past years. I also want to thank my husband for his support. And by the way, he and I met on the Fletcher Hokkaido program in 1990. He represented Canada, and I was in the group representing the US. So thanks to Fletcher for that development. And to my wonderful sons, Ray and Akira, thanks for going with me on my crazy adventures and putting up with my long hours at work. To the graduating class, may your life journey be full of wonderful surprises and opportunities to make a difference. Think globally, act locally. Thank you for letting me share my story today. Be safe, be kind, be well. Thank you.
This class has stood out to me, not just because you've coped with navigating a global pandemic while completing your degree, but also because of your advocacy. You have tirelessly worked to make the school a better place, and future Fletcher students, along with the faculty and staff, will be better off because of you.
Congratulations, graduates. I have no doubt that you will go out and change the world. But the path is not predictable, as you well know already. You're prepared, and we're rooting for you.
And now it's my great pleasure to introduce our first student speaker, Leslie Brock. Leslie has focused in her time at Fletcher on public international law and public policy decision-making. She served as co-president of the Fletcher Democrats and was selected as a Tisch Summer Fellow. Leslie served on our admissions committee, where her thoughtful dedication to ensuring future classes are diverse and strong was invaluable. Leslie will pursue a Masters of Public Health at the Chan School of Public Health at Harvard this fall, and we wish you all the success just up the road in Cambridge.
Thank you, Dean Kite, for that introduction. And thank you, the Fletcher community, especially you, class of 2021. It's always better if it sucks. Those in the security field may recognize this phrase, but for the rest of you, let me give you a little backstory. Professor Lennington, one of our very own, taught me about this military-style attitude. As she described it, the military cohorts who went through the worst of it came out of that experience stronger and bonded. From the first semester of Fletcher, when I lost my mom, to now, having not seen a real classroom since March 2020, Fletcher definitely sucked. But the military's advice rings true. My mom's death destroyed me, but it also gave me passion to pursue public health. It allowed me to re-examine myself as a person, to figure out who I want to be in this world, honoring her in the process. Most importantly, it allowed me to form vulnerable and personal relationships with the Fletcher community before I even knew most of your last names. Without your compassion, kindness, understanding, and empathy, I wouldn't have made it to that time. Without any of you, I would have crumbled. I wouldn't be speaking here today. I think it's safe to say that for the class of 2021, Fletcher also definitely sucked. During our first 3 months, we had a brief taste of the Fletcher that we had heard and read about. Filled with color house parties, culture nights, in-person office hours, food in the Nook. Remember when we had language exams in ASEAN? That was a glimpse into the Fletcher experience that many other cohorts had and will have. Instead, mired by the global pandemic, our time at Fletcher threatens to be overshadowed by Zoom fatigue and languish. Not to mention, we're the class who never had dip ball. Had we known a global pandemic was in our future, perhaps some of us would have even decided to delay or skip Fletcher altogether. But that would have been a mistake. Though our Fletcher experience has been shaped by these changes, they do not capture our time at Fletcher together. Look at the amazing things our classmates, we, have been able to do. Conferences have happened in full force. Simulations took place. Student organizations adapted to the times. The Fletcher community, the class of 2021, tried hard to forge strong bonds in a virtual world, taking advantage of the opportunities provided by the pandemic, getting speakers from all over the globe, hosting virtual cooking and debate nights, and signing up for classes to study the pandemic's lasting effects. And how great is it to have Zoom chat, giving us an opportunity to reach out to that classmate in real time, striking up a conversation with someone we may otherwise not have. This all despite living in a freaking global pandemic, a phrase I never thought would be so ubiquitous. I'm not trying to trick you into viewing the past year with rose-colored glasses. There's no doubt that this sucked, big time. But as a class, we've helped each other through it. Just as you all helped me through that first semester, offering to shoulder the burden of group work when I couldn't meet a deadline, comforting me in the Hall of Flags as I collapsed into a chair in tears, tracking down my contact information to let me know that you understood, and you were here. We too have been here for each other. This pandemic may have cursed our Fletcher experience, but it was also a blessing in allowing us to recognize each other's humanity, to collectively grieve our loss, to help people on their bad days, and celebrate their good ones. As a class, we held open conversations about mental health. Not to say we were the first class to do so, but in the midst of our new normal, mental health conversations took on a whole new meaning. It was not only welcome, but common of professors, faculty, and peers to ask what we were holding up during the pandemic. We let each other know that we understood, and we were here. This shared experience brought us closer than ever. As we move into our next chapters, I have no doubt that we will stay this way. We'll never forget our time together, moving through this challenging 2 years. But not only did we survive, we thrived. Remember that. So, maybe, after all, Fletcher didn't suck. Grad school in a pandemic might have sucked, but the class of 2021, the Fletcher community, sure didn't. Instead, to borrow another military phrase, we embraced the suck. We built lasting relationships with peers and professors, and despite our remote location, we made the Fletcher community stick together. So thank you all, especially you, class of 2021, for your resiliency, kindness, and intellect. These character traits that each one of you possess will serve you for the rest of your life. Draw on them when life gets hard, as well as when it's easy. And if all else fails, remember, you wrote a capstone during a pandemic. You can do anything.
Thank you, Leslie. Our second student speaker is Neha Lashari, who needs little introduction. She is a passionate advocate for social justice. Neha was involved in the Decolonising International Relations Conference and was a member of the Standing Committee on Diversity, Equity and Inclusion in an extraordinary year, a year on from the death of George Floyd. Winner of the Gross Award, she has pushed herself and the school to achieve new heights. After graduation, Neha is going to go and pursue her JD at the University of Wisconsin Law School. Medford Somerville's loss is Madison's gain.
The best of mornings to the Fletcher administration, faculty, staff, students, friends and family of the school, and my dearest fellow graduates. My name is Neha, and it is my honor to speak on behalf of my peers today. What a moment we're in. It feels like forever since we first met, standing around awkwardly on the 3rd floor of Cabot, silently grateful for the first person brave enough to approach and say hello. We went from that to friendly chats in the Hall of Flags, to mustering up the courage to ask one another for a coffee at Mugar, to letting off a bit of first semester steam at the various color houses. And after we thought we had cracked it, or at least had gotten the hang of grad school, and had learned to recognize Fletcher for what it was, the normal gave way to the unprecedented, the challenging times, the new normal, and the various other euphemisms we have grown used to and grown to dislike for what we all recognize as apocalypse. And let's be clear, apocalypse is not a one-time event. We know enough of the world to recognize that many cultures have experienced their own apocalypses, whether by having their cultures and livelihoods destroyed by colonial forces or lost to the ravages of nature. And even with the notion of an end time, a day of judgment, a moment of reckoning etched into our various religious psyches, we know that there will never only be one moment of reckoning. That's what the last year and a few months have been for all of us, a moment of reckoning. Our dependence on body language fell away in favor of Zoom fatigue. Our coffee dates virtual, our meetings no longer beautiful in their incidentality. And woven through this apocalypse, we see other reckonings brought to bear. We remembered that policy is not value-free, that it can be cruel. We were reminded that liberation is a process, one that requires all of us. We reconciled ourselves with the fact that healing, whether from trauma or a pandemic or both, is a community process. We have always been plural, not a collection of singulars. And that means necessarily that reckoning should not be limited to apocalypse. And what kind of plurality are we at Fletcher? We are a plurality that tries. And we get it wrong so frequently, but isn't that the point of trying? When we believe we are inherently good, we do ourselves and those we seek to help a disservice. Instead, let's not try to be good. Let's try to be better. Let us reckon. The process of betterment, of reckoning, is internal and external. It means taking a hard look at yourself and asking, with all that I have done with my life, with all that I have amassed, what can I do that will help? What do I do that hurts? This last year, we chose to use our access to Fletcher to better the institution. We engaged with the administration, we spoke with staff, we spoke to faculty, we built coalitions of students, we raised funds. Some among us even did the work of whole governments, because we know that the Fletcher School is not a collection of confusing buildings, but a group of people who want to be held accountable and who want to hold the institution accountable. I hope, no matter where we end up, we are willing to be held accountable, that we will use our cachet, whatever that looks like, to speak out in favor of liberation and against oppression. That we will not appease ourselves with, well, that's how it is, and instead say, this is not near enough. We are a school of problem solvers. So let's solve the problems rather than relitigate them. Let's imagine where we want to be and reverse engineer the radical future we want. I want to end my speech with a poem, a sestina. I hope it gets across the almighty potential I see in each and every one of us, and my belief in a future that is brave, that is just, that sees the vulnerable among us liberated. This is Sestina for Atlases. Without saying sorry, I have never been one to share my burdens. I have felt always as though my single pair of shoulders must not only be enough, but must also be enough alone. As though in sharing I am no longer enough, but simply among, as though within and between is something to be kept, a sacred secret hidden, a breath held heavy in my lungs. The other part of me is waiting to be told I can release my lungs from their Sisyphean task, that it is easier to share the burden when you know it is being held tender, treated gentle, kept. How much more bearable the weight when borne by more shoulders I had forgotten how to lean back and fall not against but among. There is liberation in the knowledge of many, in the shirking of lone. There is liberation for you here in knowing that you are not the lone bulwark against the world's worst tendencies. Here, feel my lungs, inhale, exhale, do you recognize me? My arms are for you, and I among so many to take a small parcel of your pain. Share with us your burden, and I promise there will be another soon to lift, and our shoulders together are the atlas that was promised. We are those that have kept for so long. There is a camaraderie here, born of a moment in time, kept alive through audacity, nurtured through hope, a reminder that several lone stars come together into a constellation. What will we mean, shoulder to shoulder, thrown into relief by the light of retrospect? Sometimes I see lungs inhaling imagination, exhaling the radical, creating possibility from burden. When we are past, what will be left of us? The memory of being among. These years spent between, together, among, these years spent being held, scaffolded, nurtured, fought, tested, kept, these years spent knowing that we help only as much as we can handle the burden, these years spent learning. We take the albatross, divvy up the parcel, be not alone. These years spent realizing that for all our years we took breath with all our lungs. These years lost to the vanity of only my shoulders when it could have been and has always been and will always be our shoulders. Let me ask you a question. Whose weight will you ease today? Among these shoulders there are intentions and actions. And yours? With my lungs, I ask that you promise me honesty. Beg of my intention action. Keep me kept true to these years. Keep me moral. Keep me human. Keep me from being alone. If we are to carry each other's weight, let it be hope. Let it be not a burden. We are each breathing from another's lungs, held upright against another's shoulders. I am not a wise man, but I know this. Burdens are not so when they are among company. And this company I have kept, let me always keep. Let not one of us ever be alone. Thank you, and congratulations to the Fletcher School class of 2021.
Dear Fletcher students, you will always have a special place in my heart because you dedicated yourself to pursuing your degree at Fletcher under incredibly difficult circumstances. I will never forget this class. You've proved you can persevere to accomplish your goals, and you've demonstrated great resiliency. We're so proud of you, and Fletcher will continue to support you as you embark in the next phase of your journey. Congratulations.
I'd like to offer my warmest congratulations to the class of 2021. I'd like to give a special shout out and a big congratulations to the MIBs and the GBAs. It's been a true pleasure working with you all individually, and I can't wait to see where your path carries you forward. Keep in touch and best of luck.
No Fletcher class has had to work as hard as you to earn a degree, and I have a wish for you. May the most you wish for be the least you get. Good luck.
Thank you, Neha, and thank you to the administrative team. Each year, students vote to recognise a professor who best exemplifies excellence in teaching, including an ability to make complex material understandable and enjoyable. This year's recipient of the James L. Paddock Teaching Award goes to Tom Dannenbaum, Assistant Professor of International Law. Tom joined Fletcher in 2017 and teaches international humanitarian law, international criminal law and ethics. In a short period of time, Professor Dannenbaum's eloquence, compassion and rigour have commanded the respect and affection of his peers and the devotion of his students. We're truly blessed to have him as a member of the faculty, and we benefit from his commitment and careful thought on all matters. Congratulations, Tom, for this most special of awards.
Class of 2021, thank you for the honour of speaking to you on this truly special day for you and your loved ones. It's frankly awkward for me to accept an individual teaching award. Teaching is always a shared journey, one that cannot succeed without a collective commitment and a mutual posture of vulnerability. But this year in particular, our teaching at Fletcher has been collaborative all the way through. Last spring, when the pandemic hit, I asked those of you with experience with online learning to reach out. I was blown away by the depth of your insights and engagement. It's one of the reasons I ended up using Slack in my courses. And this summer, when we transferred from the emergency posture of the spring to a deliberate approach to teaching in the autumn, An extraordinary team of students and staff, led by Cindy Rubino, worked heroically to make sure that we were prepared to reimagine our courses and our classrooms. It was an effort that involved untold hours of careful, patient, and personal attention. For example, I was recording what felt like half a semester's worth of videos one night, and before turning in for bed, I thought I'll just quickly check to make sure the quality is okay. It wasn't. It was a catastrophe. Each and every file had been corrupted with slow jams. Now imagine you're in international humanitarian law, and we're discussing the intricacies of the NIAC threshold, and this is the mood music. Frantically, I emailed Brad. We were able to get on a Zoom call the next day, and unsurprisingly, he identified the source of the problem. More surprisingly, he did so not through relying on his tech expertise, but on his experience as an accomplished bass guitarist. Brad had dealt with radio interference in studio recording with his band, and so he realized that the cord to my microphone had coiled into an antenna capable of receiving a signal from a nearby radio station, transmitting it through my microphone without my awareness. Mercifully, Brad also identified a solution to this problem. The semester was fast approaching. Now, this affirmed that Brad is the coolest person at Fletcher, and parenthetically also emphasizes that you should pursue the things you love. Make music, because it will bring you insight in any myriad number of ways that you cannot possibly predict in advance. But it also exemplifies how every step of this year has been a team effort. More than anything, though, we as teachers depend on you. We rely on and draw inspiration from your readiness to read through mountains of dense material, to engage with and trust others in study groups with people you've never even met before, and to come to class energized, committed, and ready to contribute, despite all that there has been to be despondent about this year. That we've made it through a year that continues to tear at us with loss and with pain is down primarily to you, to your community, the community that you have built and maintained, and to your care for one another. But this is commencement, and so it's now time to look forward. Many of you came to Fletcher seeking to make change, and here too, community and collaboration will be central. The Fletcher family will open doors for you, will give you access to the organizations and institutions through which you can pursue that change. And those organizations and institutions will have their own communities and cultures. In them, you will meet people who share your values, for whom you'll develop enormous respect, and with whom you can achieve extraordinary things. And that's all to the good. At the same time, those very social structures and processes of collective action warrant caution, because the very mechanisms of collaboration upon which we rely to achieve our goals can also go wrong, become distorted in ways that imperil our moral integrity, render us complicit in acts that we would know on reflection to be wrong. In any given organization, at the wrong moment with inadequate safeguards, any one of us can fall prey to rationalizing troubling conduct as necessary to achieve an important goal or to keep up with competitors or adversaries, or as not really within our domain of responsibility or involving issues that we don't fully understand. Maybe we'll draw comfort from the fact that people for whom we have enormous respect are participating, or from the notion that if we stepped back, somebody with fewer compunctions would step in. And these psychological forces can be extremely powerful. Good character and right intention is rarely sufficient to fully inoculate us from their impact. And once we start down the road of rationalizing or redescribing euphemistically our conduct, it can be very difficult to put on the brakes. Confronting our own moral missteps involves relinquishing a sense of our own righteousness, can be extremely painful. So we may be tempted to shift our principles to accommodate those missteps, taking what David Luban calls the low road to moral integrity, integrating principles with past practice rather than practice with principles. Now, this might seem like a gloomy topic for a commencement address, and you're probably now realizing your error in inviting somebody who teaches ethics to speak to you today, an error that you unfortunately compounded by inviting a Brit. But recognizing our moral vulnerability to social context is vitally important. It can give us the humility to accept that we cannot rely in our ethical lives solely on our good character. We must also grapple with the conditions within which we act. That can mean any number of things, but in the workplace it includes making space for ethical dissent, ensuring that we have a genuine diversity of perspectives and views, that people who challenge the prevailing wisdom, who raise ethical concerns and objections, are rewarded for those objections and shielded from the social costs that often attach to them. But it goes beyond just how we operate within our organizations. It means challenging ourselves to think skeptically about what we do and how we do it, and about how we justify it, not just within the organization where rationalization, redescription, and euphemism may be most rampant, but also beyond it, and in particular, to those who are left worst off by our decisions, and who therefore, prima facie, have the strongest claim to being owed a justification. It means structuring our social and professional lives so as to embed safeguards against their potentially morally distorting effects. Now, here's the good news. At Fletcher, you will have met people who have lived completely different experiences from your own. People who have completely different views from yours. You will have disagreed vehemently, and yet from what I've seen, without losing the mutual respect and affection that is constitutive of this community. You will have heard ideas and views that you've never heard before, that challenged you in profound ways. As you move forward in your professional lives, nourish and cherish the bonds with those with whom you disagreed here as much as you cherish those with whom you saw eye to eye. See in the Fletcher network not just a mechanism by which to advance your career, but a multi-perspectival community with which to challenge your biases and assumptions. Lean on one another. Challenge one another constantly. Go and make the change you've been seeking. Congratulations, it has been such a privilege to learn with you.
You have worked hard, studied hard, learned in a period of great adversity, and you've accomplished much. You should feel incredibly proud of yourselves. There are losses, to be sure, losses that can't be given back, that can't be repaired. But I hope with the passage of time, those losses will fade somewhat, and what you'll remember is all that you've accomplished, all that you've done, despite the difficulties that life lay in your path.
And now it's my honour to introduce a colleague and friend, a humanitarian, an international civil servant, and an indefatigable multilateralist, Filippo Grandi. If he were here in person, I would congratulate him too on Italy's historic victory at Eurovision last night. He is the 11th United Nations High Commissioner of Refugees at a time when 1% of the world's population is living in forced exile, and where, for the first time, the number of people internally displaced by the impacts of climate change exceeds those displaced by war. Formerly serving as the Commissioner General of the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees and as a UN Secretary-General's Deputy Special Representative to Afghanistan, he is well versed in the complexities of some of the world's most intractable conflicts and the vulnerability and the resilience of refugees and those who are displaced. He has seen most recently the bitter effects of populisms as they attempted to stymie multilateralism in negotiations on the Global Compact on Migration. He has pioneered new partnerships with private sector partners and philanthropy and civil society, and in this era of hybrid governance has proven adept at moving UNHCR forward in service to the most vulnerable, even at a time when consensus has made it difficult for us to serve those who are most in need. Initiated by Dean Ted Elliott in 1983, the Fletcher School Medal honours those who have served notably in the international arena. In recognition of Filippo's tireless global leadership on an issue so important that we will leave no one behind, and his shared values with those of the Fletcher School, a pursuit of a just and more peaceful world, it is my distinct honour and privilege as Dean to present our highest honour to Mr. Filippo Grandi, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, the Fletcher School Medal for Distinguished International Service.
Thank you, Dean Kite. Thank you, Rachel. And thank you, graduates. It is an honor to be somehow with you today and congratulate the newest group of distinguished alumni from the Fletcher School in what I really hope will be your last virtual commencement. Fletcher, as we know, has produced a wealth of leaders in all walks of life, including United Nations officials and dedicated humanitarians. And I know we can count on many of you to help lead the world through tomorrow's challenges. Dear graduates, I will state the obvious, but it has been a difficult year, even for the most privileged amongst us. We have been separated from family and friends, have lost loved ones, have been forced to grieve alone. And I know that young people have had a particularly difficult time with restrictions on life and concerns about work and employment. Students have been unable to take advantage of the richness that university life normally presents and the learning experiences that come both in and out of the classroom. The challenges of the past year have been even more harsh for the world's most vulnerable, including the more than 80 million people whom my organization, UNHCR, the United Nations Refugee Agency, helps and strives to protect. People, as you know, forced to flee their homes because of conflict, violence, discrimination, or persecution. Think of how bad things must be if your only path to safety is not to stay in your home, but rather to flee it. To be forced to leave family, friends, and the familiar. To be thrown into the unknown of a different country, perhaps a different language and culture, where if you have documentation, even your legal status may be questioned. Where you and your children may not have access to health care or schooling, or be able to work legally. In this past year, even that path to safety, the crossing of borders, has narrowed. Movement, literally as sometimes it means running, provides an escape for people fleeing the threats of war and persecution. Today, movement has come to represent a threat to our health, The virus moves with people. This is a terrible dilemma which we have struggled to resolve in the past few months. Dear graduates, the world into which you embark is one more divided and in many ways more dangerous than it has been at any period, at least in more than 35 years of my own humanitarian career. We live in a multipolar world with countries taking what I call an egoistic approach to politics. Allies on this issue, adversaries on the next, an approach that embodies the toxic me first, my country first mentality at the expense of enduring relationships and values and the interests of humanity. And in the process, the heaviest burden is shouldered by the world's most vulnerable. We have seen this fragmentation of international politics in the response to the COVID-19 pandemic, where some irresponsible leaders ignored scientific advice, blamed others, and refused to cooperate. We see it play out in the scandalous inequality of global vaccine distribution, which is quickly leaving the world divided between inoculated and infected, with mutations and viral variants coming back to strike everybody again and again. International egoism, graduates, is dramatically short-sighted. We see it in the approach to the climate emergency, which cannot be addressed unless we all, and urgently, cooperate and take dramatic steps. For without that cooperation, we will all suffer dramatically. And we see it with conflict, where despite desperate pleas for a COVID ceasefire, old wars resumed, protracted ones continued, and new wars erupted, with the most vulnerable yet again bearing the brunt. Because as the author and refugee Viet Thanh Nguyen wrote in his novel The Sympathizer, I quote, "No one asks poor people if they want war," unquote. Dear friends, I have painted a very dark picture of the world today. Yet, it is important not to despair, but rather fight to make it the way it should be. And if you're as lucky as me and get to work for refugees, you will see that even those from whom everything was taken also refuse to give up. It is their drive, their determination that continue to inspire me every single day. I saw it in the eyes of a young Venezuelan mother I met last year, determined to find safety and rebuild her small family's life in a welcoming Colombian community. In the resilience of a South Sudanese man, the same age as me, who had been a refugee four times in his life, the same length of my own, stable and privileged one. And yet he still wanted to return to his homeland in peace. I've seen it in the heroism of an Afghan refugee, now a doctor in the United Kingdom, working on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic response. They and countless others have not given up. So nor can we. Instead, we must learn, engage, and act in whatever field we choose or we're chosen to be involved. Dear graduates, this is a commencement speech, and I'm supposed to send you off with some wise counsel and inspiring words. Instead, I will, in all humility, simply share some reflections for your consideration. as my generation is not doing very well in sorting out the world's challenges, and therefore I'm not sure we have the standing to impart too much advice on yours. So first, see the world for how it is. See through it with clinical eyes, but don't become cynical and don't accept that it has to be that way. Create opportunities for change and always strive to find ways forward, if not solutions, even or especially in difficult situations. This is something we at UNHCR try to do every day as we address the impossible dilemmas which the failure of politics forces humanitarians to face. And that often results in difficult decisions. Choosing a path of engagement means that you will find yourselves not in the comfort zone of the black or white, but in the frequently unsettling gray areas. You will have to be more than smart to navigate those choices, but stay true to core values. Uphold equality and integrity. Maintain a strong sense of empathy and kindness towards the others. They will be your North Stars. You know perhaps the evangelical admonition which I have always cherished. So be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. My second reflection is about the scourge of stigma. We have seen how this has played out this year with fears that the virus was brought by the other. People of Asian origin were attacked because of it. It has forced people with COVID to hide their symptoms, leaving them so sick they could not be saved, or allowing the virus to spread further. At UNHCR, we see every day how stigma leads to violence and displacement. It can be tied to one's ethnic origin, or social class, or sexual orientation. And it can follow refugees to their countries of asylum, leaving them vulnerable or even threatened, rather than safe and welcomed. So mine is an appeal. Do more. We must all do more to counter stigma, racism, and discrimination wherever they lie, in our countries, in our communities, sometimes even hidden inside ourselves. And to conclude, a message which I think is appropriate to graduates of your great school. Believe in and support international cooperation. It is a simple message, but regrettably, we cannot take it for granted anymore. The big challenges humanity faces, be it COVID, climate, or conflict, require us to work together ever more closely if we are to truly heed the Fletcher School's greater mission, the promotion of peace, prosperity, and justice in the world. Congratulations.
With Filippo Grandi's words and his call to action ringing in our ears, I present the graduating class of 2021. I spoke earlier of those rooms, perhaps negotiating rooms, where you will enter and find another Fletcher graduate sitting opposite. Linda Young talked about the same thing. That room may be real or virtual, a boardroom or a parliamentary committee. It may be as part of a peace process, a ceasefire, a community investment. Whatever room it is, from our founding, we have an expectation that our work will be of an unusually significant nature. The faculty and I have no doubt that this class will live up to that expectation, as have the classes before you. But remember, if we want peace, we have to work for justice. And if we want to see peace in the world, we need to find peace in ourselves. Take strength from your amazing ability to adapt and continue your pursuit of justice. You have done well this year, and it has been hard. Take heart too from your collective ability to come together and build community even when being apart. Hold on to that feeling. Always find ways to be still amid the warp speed melee of social media white noise and clutter. When you get it wrong, find your way back to nature and take a deep breath. Nature doesn't have to be a wide expanse of ocean or a mountain or a forest. It can be a patch of green in a heat island or a small plant growing in the cracks of a pavement. Our pandemic era has taught us again that we need to find our way back to peace with nature. As you turn the page to your next chapter, on behalf of the faculty and staff of the Fletcher School, congratulations. We will watch with pride your contributions, and we will always be here to welcome you back in any capacity. Enjoy this moment, and because it's right to quote Mary Oliver, whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. Class of 2021, go well.